You came here for a real answer, not vague reassurance. And by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly what's going on and what you can actually do about it. If your 2-year-old isn't talking yet, this isn't something you have to just wait and see about without clarity. There is a reason, and once you see it clearly, the situation stops feeling so confusing and starts feeling something you can actually influence. Picture this for a second. You're at the park, watching your child play. Another toddler, about the same age, runs over and says something clear like, "I want to go on the swing." It's casual, effortless, and in that moment, your attention shifts. You glance at your own child. They're pointing, maybe tugging at your hand, maybe making sounds, but no actual words. You smile on the outside, you stay present, but something has already started in your mind. On the way home, that thought gets louder. Why isn't my child talking yet? Did I miss something? Is this normal? And it doesn't just disappear, it follows you into quiet moments. It shows up during checkups. It lingers longer than you expected. So let's actually talk about it honestly, not in a way that brushes off your concern, but in a way that explains it. First, you're not overthinking this. Around the age of 2, many developmental guidelines expect children to have roughly 50 words and begin combining them into simple phrases like "more juice" or "go outside." If your child isn't doing that yet, it's completely understandable that you'd feel concerned. But at the same time, it's more common than most people realize. A significant number of children, around 1 in 5, develop spoken language later than others their age. Imagine a parent, we'll call her Naomi. Her son just turned 2. He laughs, he plays, he understands instructions, he connects with her. If she asks him to bring his shoes or point to something, he does it. There's awareness there. But when it comes to actually saying words, there's almost nothing. And every time she sees another child speaking clearly, she feels that quiet tension build again. If that feels familiar, you're not alone in this. But here's where most people go in the wrong direction. They start looking for signs that something is wrong. They search for checklists, red flags, comparisons. And while those things can be helpful in certain ways, they often skip the most important question: why is this happening? Because speech doesn't just appear on its own timeline. It depends on a system, a process with multiple parts working together. And when even one part of that system slows down, speech doesn't show up the way you expect it to. Think of it like a machine, not something complicated in a scary way, but something structured. If one part isn't doing its job, the whole thing doesn't move forward properly. There are 4 key pieces in this system. The first is motivation. Your child has to feel a reason to use words, not just desire things, but feel that words are needed to get them. If everything they want is given before they try to communicate, that internal push doesn't fully develop. The second is processing. Before a word is spoken, the brain has to hear it, understand it, organize it, and plan how to use it. That's a lot happening behind the scenes. This part builds over time through repetition and exposure. The third is motor coordination. This surprises a lot of people. Speaking isn't just about knowing words, it's about physically producing them. The brain has to guide the mouth, tongue, lips, and breath in a precise sequence. For some children, this coordination is still developing. And the fourth is interaction. Language grows through back and forth exchanges, not just hearing words, but participating in communication where responses matter. If even one of these areas isn't fully active yet, speech can be delayed. And that's why 2 children the same age not talking might actually have completely different reasons behind it. Now, there's another piece that often causes unnecessary stress: the difference between a late talker and a deeper delay. Not every quiet child has a problem. Some children are naturally more observant. They take in everything around them, build understanding internally, and then suddenly begin speaking later. Others are more reserved in how they express themselves. One of the most useful things you can notice is whether your child understands what's being said to them. If they respond to their name, follow simple instructions, point to things, and engage with you non-verbally, that's meaningful. It shows that part of the system is working. There's also something important to clear up. Labels like lazy or stubborn don't apply here. A child who isn't speaking isn't choosing not to. If words aren't coming, it's because something is making that process difficult, not because they don't feel like doing it. Sometimes when you ask a child to say something and they don't, it's not defiance, it's pressure, it's uncertainty, it's the system not being ready in that moment. Now, let's look at what might actually be slowing things down. One of the most common reasons is something that comes from care and love. When parents anticipate everything, handing over items before the child asks, responding immediately to gestures, the need to use language never fully builds. If pointing works every time, there's no reason to replace it with words. Another factor is the type of interaction happening. There's a big difference between talking to a child and communicating with them. When most communication is instructions, come here, sit down, eat this, it doesn't create a back and forth rhythm. Without that rhythm, language doesn't develop the same way.
Motor coordination can also play a role. Some children know what they want to say, but the physical act of saying it feels difficult. When that happens repeatedly, they may stop trying, not out of disinterest, but because it's frustrating. There's also the impact of passive input. Hearing language through screens or background noise doesn't build speaking skills the same way real interaction does. It fills the environment with sound, but it doesn't invite participation. And then there are biological factors. Hearing is one of the most important. Even mild hearing issues can affect speech development, especially if they go unnoticed. That's why checking hearing early is always a good step. Beyond that, there can be neurological differences that affect how language develops. These aren't things to panic about, they're things to understand early so the right support can be provided. Now here's something that can be difficult to hear, but it matters. Some everyday habits, completely normal ones, can unintentionally make it harder for speech to develop. When you step in too quickly, you remove the need to communicate. When you ask too many questions, it can feel like pressure instead of conversation. When language is too fast or complex, it becomes harder to process. When every attempt is corrected, it can make trying feel risky. And when screens replace interaction, something essential is lost. None of this is about blame, it's about awareness. Because once you see it, you can start shifting it. And the good part is, the changes don't have to be complicated. You can start by creating small opportunities where your child needs to communicate. Not in a frustrating way, but in a natural way. Let there be a pause before you respond. Give space for an attempt. You can also begin waiting more. After your child gestures or makes a sound, give a few seconds before jumping in. That pause gives their brain time to process and possibly try something new. Another powerful approach is simply describing what's happening during your day. Not testing, not asking, just narrating. Short, simple phrases repeated over time build familiarity. Reducing passive input and replacing it with interaction also makes a difference. It doesn't have to be complicated activities. Even simple play that involves back and forth engagement builds communication skills. And then there are routines. Repeating simple, predictable phrases during play creates anticipation, and that anticipation is often where attempts begin. If you want to think about what this looks like in a short time frame, imagine this. At first, you start noticing where you usually step in too quickly. You pause instead. It feels different, maybe even a little awkward, but you hold it. Then you begin narrating more, keeping it simple, repeating words in context. Then you introduce small games, repeated the same way each time. By the end of a week, you're not expecting full sentences, but you might notice something else. More eye contact, more sounds, more attempts. That's the system starting to move. And if after all of this, something still doesn't feel quite right, it's important to pause and really listen to that feeling. That quiet sense that something is off, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, is often your body and mind trying to get your attention. Too often, people brush it aside thinking it will pass or that it's not serious enough to address. But your instincts exist for a reason, and they deserve to be taken seriously. Seeking professional input at that point is not a sign of weakness, failure, or overreaction. In fact, it's one of the most responsible and proactive decisions you can make for yourself. Reaching out for guidance shows self-awareness and a willingness to take control of your well-being rather than ignoring potential concerns. Whether it's a doctor, therapist, coach, or specialist, having an expert perspective can bring clarity, reassurance, and direction. Early support can make a powerful difference. Small issues, when addressed early, are often easier to manage and resolve. What might feel confusing or overwhelming on your own can become clearer with the right help. In many cases, people are surprised to find support systems are more accessible than they initially thought, through clinics, online consultations, community services, or even simple first steps like a conversation. Most importantly, remember that you don't have to navigate everything alone. Paying attention to your instincts and taking action is a form of self-respect. It's about choosing progress over doubt and care over avoidance. Even a single step toward support can open the door to understanding, healing, and a stronger sense of control over your situation. So, if you take anything, let it be this: your child isn't behind because of one fixed reason. Speech and language development simply don't work in such a narrow, one-dimensional way. It's not about a single delay or one missing piece, it's about a combination of systems working together. These include hearing, brain development, social interaction, motor skills, environment, and even confidence. When one part develops a little slower or differently, it can influence the overall pace of communication. That's why comparing children or looking for one clear cause can often lead to unnecessary worry or confusion. Every child develops at their own pace, and speech is especially complex because it relies on multiple processes happening at once. A child might understand everything but struggle to express it, or they may have strong verbal skills but need more time to process language. None of this means something is wrong, it simply means their development has its own pattern. When you begin to understand these systems, everything starts to feel less uncertain. Instead of guessing or assuming the worst, you start noticing specific areas: how your child listens, responds, gestures, plays, and interacts. These small observations give you a clearer picture of what's actually happening rather than relying on labels or comparisons. This shift in perspective is powerful. It replaces fear with awareness and helps you make more informed decisions. Whether it's providing more language-rich interaction at home or seeking guidance from a professional, your actions become more focused and effective. In the end, understanding how speech truly works allows you to support your child with patience and clarity. It's not about rushing them to catch up, but about helping each system grow in its own time, creating a strong and natural foundation for communication. And once you see clearly, you can actually help things move forward.